Imagine a blast so powerful it flattens 80 million trees across an area the size of a major city, and yet, to this day, no one has ever found a crater. No meteorite, no obvious wreckage, just complete devastation, and one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in the history of science. This actually happened. It's called the Tunguska Event, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why scientists are still arguing about what really caused it, over 100 years later. June 30th, 1908. Early morning, in one of the most remote and unforgiving places on Earth, the dense Siberian forest near the Podkamenia Tunguska River, hundreds of miles from the nearest town, in a region so isolated that it would take Russian scientists nearly 2 decades to even organize a proper expedition to investigate what happened there. It's a normal summer day. Local Evenki reindeer herders are going about their lives, tending to their animals and preparing for the season ahead, completely unaware that within seconds, their entire world is about to be turned upside down. At around 7 in the morning, witnesses hundreds of miles away report seeing a blinding column of blue-white light streak across the sky, almost as bright as the sun itself. It's moving fast, unnaturally fast, cutting through the atmosphere at a steep angle from the southeast toward the northwest. Some witnesses later describe it as looking like a second sun had briefly appeared in the sky, so intense that people had to shield their eyes even from many kilometers away. Then, without warning, the sky itself seems to split open. A massive explosion tears through the air above the forest. Not on the ground, in the sky. The blast is later estimated to have released energy equivalent to somewhere between 10 and 15 megatons of TNT. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima decades later, and it remains, to this day, the largest impact-related explosion in recorded human history, dwarfing almost every other natural or man-made explosion ever documented. The shockwave that follows is almost impossible to comprehend. It flattens an estimated 80 million trees across more than 2,000 square kilometers of forest, snapping trunks like matchsticks and knocking them all down in the same direction, radiating outward from a central point like a giant fallen halo carved directly into the wilderness, an area so vast that if it happened over a major modern city, it would likely stretch from one end of that entire city to the other. Decades later, satellite imagery would still clearly reveal the outline of this enormous butterfly-shaped pattern of destruction etched permanently into the Siberian landscape. People as far as 60 kilometers away are physically thrown off their feet by the force of the blast, some knocked unconscious by the sheer pressure wave alone. Windows shatter hundreds of kilometers from the epicenter, and the heat from the explosion reportedly scorches the skin of people standing many kilometers away, even though they were nowhere near the actual site of impact. Seismic stations as far away as Western Europe register the shockwave rippling through the Earth's crust, and barometers in England detect distinct atmospheric pressure waves rippling around the entire planet not once, but twice. For several nights afterward, the sky itself glows strangely bright across parts of Europe and Asia, so bright that people report being able to read newspapers outdoors at midnight without any artificial light at all, a phenomenon scientists now believe was caused by sunlight scattering off dust particles the explosion had thrown high into the upper atmosphere. And yet, here's where the mystery truly begins. When scientific expeditions finally reached the remote impact zone years later, led by Russian mineralogist Leonid Kulik in 1927, they find something deeply strange. There is no crater. There are no obvious fragments of a meteorite scattered across the ground. Just millions of trees, all knocked flat in eerily precise patterns, radiating outward from ground zero, with a strange patch near the very center where some trees are still standing upright, stripped bare of branches and bark, almost like they were struck from directly above rather than from any single direction, a detail that would puzzle investigators for generations afterward. So what on earth actually caused this? For over a century, that question has fueled fierce scientific debate, along with no shortage of wild theories, in a mystery that in many ways still hasn't been fully closed even today. The leading scientific explanation is that a large space rock, either a small asteroid or a piece of a comet, roughly 50 to 60 meters wide, about the size of a large office building, entered Earth's atmosphere at extremely high speed, likely tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. As it plunged downward, atmospheric pressure and heat became so intense that the object never actually reached the ground at all. Instead, it violently disintegrated and exploded in mid-air, several kilometers above the forest, in what scientists call an airburst. This single detail explains almost everything: the missing crater, the radiating pattern of fallen trees, and the sheer scale of destruction, all consistent with an enormous explosion happening high in the sky rather than upon direct impact with solid ground. But because no meteorite fragments were ever conclusively recovered at the site for many decades, alternative theories have flourished. Some scientists proposed it may have been an icy comet fragment, which would explain why so little solid debris was left behind, since ice largely vaporizes on impact with the atmosphere, leaving almost nothing solid behind to be found by later expeditions. Others have speculated about a small chunk of antimatter colliding with Earth, though this idea has largely been dismissed by mainstream physicists due to a lack of supporting evidence, particularly the complete absence of the intense gamma radiation such an antimatter annihilation event would be expected to produce. Then, of course, come the far stranger theories that have captured public imagination for generations. Some fringe researchers have suggested it might have been a crashed alien spacecraft, essentially treating Tunguska as history's most destructive UFO incident, an idea that has appeared repeatedly in popular culture, films, and conspiracy circles ever since. Others floated ideas involving a burst of natural gas erupting from deep underground, or even, in more speculative corners, comparisons to secret experimental technology involving a young Nikola Tesla, decades before anything resembling that kind of weapon could realistically have existed. None of these alternative theories, however, have held up under serious scientific scrutiny, and the overwhelming consensus among researchers today still points firmly toward a natural cosmic impact. What makes Tunguska especially chilling to think about isn't just what happened, but where it happened. If that same object had arrived just a few hours later, given the Earth's rotation carrying different regions of the planet into its path, it could have detonated over a major populated city instead of remote Siberian wilderness. Some researchers have pointed out that a slightly different timing could have meant this exact event happening directly over a city like St. Petersburg, with a death toll potentially in the hundreds of thousands or more. Instead, because of pure geographic luck, the devastation played out almost entirely in an unpopulated forest, and even then, it remains the largest impact event in recorded human history, with no confirmed human casualties despite the almost unimaginable scale of destruction it caused. Modern scientists continue studying the region using satellite imagery, soil samples, and advanced computer modeling of atmospheric airbursts, refining our understanding of exactly how an object like that behaves as it breaks apart and explodes above the Earth's surface. Some studies have even suggested that tiny fragments consistent with an asteroid's chemical signature have finally been identified in soil and peat samples from the region, lending further support to the mainstream asteroid airburst explanation, even though a dramatic, obvious crater has still never been found anywhere near the site, which keeps a small sliver of genuine scientific debate alive even today, more than a century after the event itself occurred. Tunguska has also become one of the key case studies driving global efforts in planetary defense. It's a stark, real-world reminder that something roughly the size of a large building can enter our atmosphere completely undetected and unleash devastation on a scale that rivals or exceeds a nuclear weapon, and it can do so with almost no warning at all, arriving from empty space with only a brief flash of light to signal what's coming. Space agencies around the world now actively track near-Earth objects specifically because of what Tunguska demonstrated was possible, running detection programs whose entire purpose is to make sure a surprise event of this scale never catches humanity off guard again, cataloging thousands of asteroids and comets that pass anywhere close to our planet's orbit, and running simulations of exactly what humanity would need to do if a similar object were ever detected heading toward Earth again, whether that means deflecting it, nudging its trajectory slightly off course, or simply giving people enough advance warning to evacuate. So what do we actually take away from an event like this? It's a genuinely humbling reminder of just how vulnerable our planet really is to forces from beyond it, and how easily an ordinary summer morning can turn into one of the most destructive natural events in recorded history, all without a single confirmed human casualty purely by chance of geography and timing. It's also a reminder of how much we still don't fully understand about our own solar system and the countless objects quietly drifting through it, many of them large enough to cause devastation on a scale we can barely comprehend. Next time you look up at a clear night sky, remember that in 1908, something came hurtling out of that same sky with the force of 1,000 Hiroshimas and flattened an entire forest before anyone even understood what was happening, leaving behind a scar on the landscape that scientists are still studying and debating more than 100 years later. If this story fascinated you the way it fascinated me, make sure you're subscribed, because there are mysteries out there just as strange and unexplained as this one, and I'm going to cover every single one of them.